The grand hall shimmered under golden chandeliers as Isabella Monroe stood at the edge of the dance floor, her emerald green gown flowing like water around her. Guests laughed, clinked glasses, and shared heartfelt toasts, but Isabella felt like she was watching the celebration through a foggy window. Just 6 months ago, she had fallen head over heels for Adrian Sullivan, a man whose charm and ambition had seemed larger than life. Now, as he chatted animatedly with his old friends, she noticed a subtle tension in his posture whenever their eyes met. Brushing it aside as pre-wedding nerves, she tried to focus on the joy surrounding her. Later that night, in the quiet luxury of their honeymoon suite overlooking the city skyline, Isabella slipped off her heels and sank onto the king-sized bed, thinking this was the start of forever. But Adrian didn't move toward her. Instead, he stood by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, his hands clasped behind him. "Isabella, we need to talk," he said finally, his voice eerily calm. Those words alone made her heart stumble. Within moments, he confessed that he loved someone else, someone from his past he couldn't forget. He had gone through with the wedding despite knowing for weeks, and now he wanted a divorce. Shock anchored Isabella to the floor. Her chest ached, but the tears didn't come. It wasn't just the loss, it was the betrayal, the calculated cruelty of vows exchanged under false pretenses. Adrian left as silently as he had revealed the truth, and she spent the night staring at the city lights, feeling as if the entire world had tilted on its axis. Returning to her modest apartment in the days that followed, Isabella felt a mixture of relief and devastation. Her best friend, Hannah, arrived with coffee and pastries, and despite the pain, her presence offered a lifeline. "You'll get through this," Hannah said softly, squeezing her hand. And slowly, Isabella realized she would. She threw herself into work at the small publishing firm she had always loved, staying late, taking on new projects, and finding solace in the creative energy of her job. Weeks later, a surprising email appeared in her inbox, an offer from a prominent media company to lead their marketing department. The email was signed by Lucas Reed, a man known for turning struggling companies into market leaders. Despite her initial skepticism, she decided to meet him. The interview revealed a man who valued her vision, intelligence, and resilience. Lucas offered her not only the position, but the autonomy and respect she had long craved. For the first time since her world had collapsed, Isabella felt excitement that had nothing to do with romance, pure, empowering ambition. At the new office, Lucas became a mentor and a steady presence, challenging her ideas while trusting her judgment. Weeks turned into months, and Isabella thrived, spearheading campaigns that revitalized the company's image and earned her recognition across the industry. Her confidence returned in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was building a life rooted in her own strength, independent of anyone else's choices. One evening, she encountered Adrian unexpectedly in the lobby of her office building. Time had changed him, his casual arrogance replaced by something tentative, almost regretful. He approached cautiously, offering apologies that felt hollow to her ears. Isabella listened, nodded politely, but felt no sting of old pain. She had already reclaimed her heart. She had chosen herself first, and in doing so, discovered a depth of resilience she hadn't known existed. Meanwhile, Lucas's support had grown beyond professional bounds. He admired her courage and brilliance, but he also cared for her as a person. Their connection deepened, a slow, steady unfolding of trust and affection. One night, after celebrating the successful launch of a major campaign, Lucas confessed his feelings. Isabella's heart raced, not with desperation or dependency, but with recognition of something real, patient, and unwavering. She realized that love could be gentle, not a storm of betrayal and heartbreak. Months later, they attended a charity gala together. The same hall where her wedding had ended in despair now became a stage for her triumph. Isabella moved through the room with grace, Lucas at her side, her confidence radiating. Adrian was there too, with the woman he had left her for, and the sight no longer stung. She had outgrown the version of herself that had depended on his love. She had chosen someone who chose her every day, not out of obligation, but out of admiration and genuine care. The night ended with Lucas walking her home, their hands intertwined. "I want to build a life with you," he said quietly, "but only if it's what you want too, at your pace." Isabella smiled, tears of joy threatening to spill. "I want that," she whispered, "and I want it with you." In that moment, she understood the truth of her journey. Sometimes the world breaks you not to punish you, but to clear the path for something far greater. By the following spring, Isabella and Lucas were inseparable, building a life together grounded in respect, partnership, and shared dreams. Their love wasn't defined by grand gestures or desperation. It was steady, reassuring, and profound. Isabella looked back at her past with gratitude rather than bitterness, understanding that heartbreak was her teacher, resilience her companion, and self-love her ultimate victory. And as she walked beside Lucas through blooming city gardens, she felt the weight of the past lift entirely. She had survived the storm, thrived beyond expectation, and discovered that the truest love begins with oneself.
Spring had arrived in the city. Soft sunlight filtering through the office windows and casting golden patterns across Isabella's desk. She had settled fully into her role as marketing director, but the thrill of her accomplishments hadn't dulled her awareness of life's fragility. Every time she passed by the high-rise apartments where she and Adrian had planned their future, a shiver of memory reminded her of how quickly life could unravel. Yet she felt stronger than ever, resilient in a way that no heartbreak could undo. Lucas noticed the change in her too. During their lunches at the small cafe around the corner from the office, he'd watch her animatedly discuss campaigns, her eyes alight with creativity, and he'd feel a quiet pride swelling in his chest. "You're unstoppable," he said one afternoon, his fingers brushing hers over a steaming cup of cappuccino. Isabella laughed softly, but there was a tremor in her voice. "I almost didn't survive the last 6 months," she admitted. Lucas's gaze softened. "You did more than survive. You became unstoppable, and you've earned everything you're building now." Workdays blurred into long evenings as Isabella spearheaded a groundbreaking marketing initiative for a high-profile client. The pressure was immense, but for the first time it felt exhilarating instead of suffocating. Her team, initially hesitant to accept her leadership, had grown to respect her vision and strategy, and she was beginning to see tangible results: contracts renewed, revenue boosted, and her campaigns praised in industry publications. With each victory, a piece of her former self, the broken, betrayed Isabella, was replaced by someone confident, unafraid, and empowered. One evening, as she prepared to leave the office, a familiar presence startled her. Adrian Sullivan stood in the lobby, looking worn and uncharacteristically vulnerable. His sharp, commanding demeanor had softened into something almost human, but Isabella's instincts warned her to guard her heart. He approached, holding a small envelope. "Isabella, I wanted to give this to you personally," he said, his voice strained. She took the envelope cautiously. Inside was a handwritten note, an apology layered with regret and acknowledgement of his mistakes. "I realize now the depth of what I lost," he said quietly. "I see the life I could have built with you, and the life you've created without me. I'm proud of you, truly." Isabella felt a flicker of emotion, but it was tempered by clarity. She had grieved, healed, and grown stronger than the woman who had cried alone in her honeymoon suite. "Thank you," she said simply, folding the note carefully. "I appreciate your words, but the past is the past." Adrian nodded, a mixture of sorrow and relief passing across his features. He left without another word, leaving Isabella with a strange sense of closure she hadn't expected. Lucas met her at the front of the building that evening, his hand resting lightly on her lower back. "Everything okay?" he asked. She looked up at him, the warmth in his brown eyes steadying her. "Better than okay," she said, slipping her hand into his. "I feel free." He smiled, tugging her gently toward the car. "Good, because we have a life to build, and it starts tonight." That weekend, they attended a networking gala together. Isabella glided through the room with confidence, Lucas by her side, and for the first time in months, she felt untethered from past shame or heartbreak. She laughed freely, her voice unburdened, and Lucas's presence was a grounding force she had come to depend on, not in need, but in choice. Adrian's face appeared across the room, and for a fleeting moment she felt a pang, but it was quickly replaced by a serene clarity. She was no longer defined by his absence or betrayal. She was defined by her own courage and the love she had chosen in the present. Weeks turned into months, and Isabella's career soared. She negotiated international contracts, led groundbreaking campaigns, and became the youngest vice president of marketing in the company's history. The recognition was thrilling, but the deeper satisfaction came from the trust Lucas placed in her abilities and the partnership they had nurtured outside the office. Their relationship flourished quietly, built on mutual respect, shared humor, and an understanding that love wasn't measured by grand gestures, but by consistency, honesty, and care. One crisp autumn evening, Lucas invited Isabella to a private dinner in his apartment. The city skyline glimmered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting reflections across the room. He held a small, velvet-wrapped box in his hands. "Isabella, you've transformed my life. Your strength, brilliance, and heart have changed everything. I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you, every day, in every way." He opened the box, revealing a delicate ring, understated yet perfect, exactly like her. Tears filled her eyes, not of pain, but of pure joy. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, I want that too." The next months were filled with quiet, profound happiness. They moved in together, adopted a small rescue dog, and continued to grow both professionally and personally. Isabella reflected often on the journey that had brought her here, from the night of betrayal to the empowering leap into a career and love she had chosen. She realized that some of life's greatest heartbreaks were actually doorways, guiding her towards opportunities, relationships, and inner strength she might never have discovered otherwise. And so, in a small, warmly lit apartment overlooking the city, Isabella found herself truly home, not because of a man, a job, or a ring, but because she had discovered the unshakable core of herself. She had loved, been hurt, risen, and chosen again. And this time, the love she embraced was real, steady, and fully reciprocal. A love built not on illusion or desperation, but on mutual respect, admiration, and the courage to start anew. For Isabella Monroe, life had finally aligned. Heartbreak had become her teacher, resilience her ally, and love her reward.
Winter arrived in the city with a sharp, frosty edge, the streets glittering under layers of fresh snow. Isabella's office glowed with warm light as she wrapped up another late evening, her mind alive with strategies and campaigns for Hartwell Media. Her phone buzzed, and for a moment she hesitated, seeing Adrian's name flash across the screen stirred a faint tension in her chest. She ignored it at first, but curiosity and lingering closure compelled her to answer. "Isabella, I need to see you." Adrian's voice was low, almost pleading. He wasn't demanding, he sounded different, vulnerable. She hesitated, then shook her head, firm. "Adrian, there's nothing left to discuss." He sighed, heavy with regret. "Not about us," he said, "but I need your advice. I've made mistakes professionally, personally. I'm at a crossroads, and you're the only person I trust to be honest with me." Isabella felt a flicker of sympathy but held her ground. She would help, but this was strictly business. The next afternoon, they met in a quiet cafe, their conversation professional yet layered with unspoken history. Adrian spoke openly about his failures, the choices he had made, and how losing her had forced him to confront parts of himself he had long ignored. Isabella listened, offering measured guidance. She realized that the closure she had gained wasn't just emotional, it had strengthened her ability to navigate challenges with clarity, even when they involved people who had once hurt her deeply. Meanwhile, Lucas had become a steadfast presence in her life. Their evenings together were a sanctuary from the demands of work, filled with quiet laughter, cooking disasters, and late-night conversations that drifted from trivial to profound. Isabella discovered that real love wasn't about fireworks or desperate declarations. It was about unwavering support, honest communication, and mutual growth.
Every smile Lucas gave her, every time he reminded her of her strength, grounded her in the reality of being chosen, not settled for. At work, her projects expanded. A multinational client had approached Hartwell Media with a daunting challenge, rebranding their entire corporate identity before the new fiscal year. The pressure was immense, the stakes higher than anything Isabella had faced. Yet she thrived. Her team rallied under her leadership, their respect now absolute, as she guided them through brainstorming sessions, late-night revisions, and high-stakes presentations. Each success cemented her belief that the woman she had become, resilient, brilliant, and unafraid, was exactly who she was meant to be. Then came the gala that would forever mark a turning point. Hartwell Media had been nominated for a prestigious industry award, and the evening was set to celebrate innovation and leadership. Isabella prepared carefully, her emerald gown sparkling subtly in the golden light. Lucas arrived, as always, calm, reassuring, and unwavering in his presence. As they entered the ballroom, Isabella's eyes swept the room, catching familiar faces, colleagues, and even Adrian. His gaze met hers briefly, and for the first time since their breakup, she noticed something new: humility. He had changed, but Isabella had changed even more. Throughout the night, she moved with confidence, engaging with industry leaders, presenting ideas she had meticulously prepared, and witnessing her vision resonate with others. Lucas remained at her side, a quiet anchor, offering smiles, encouragement, and the occasional protective presence when old acquaintances tried to comment on her past. In those moments, Isabella realized how much she had grown, from a woman shattered by betrayal to someone who could navigate heartbreak, ambition, and love with grace and power. After the gala, Lucas walked her home under the pale winter moon. The city was silent, the streets sparkling under fresh snow. He turned to her, his hands holding hers firmly. "You've changed my life, Isabella," he said softly, "not just by being here, but by being you, strong, brilliant, fearless. And I want to continue building this life with you, step by step, every single day." Her chest swelled with emotion. "I want that too," she whispered. "I've learned what love should feel like and what it shouldn't, and with you I finally understand it." Weeks later, a crisis at work tested her resilience in ways she hadn't anticipated. A major campaign had unexpectedly faltered due to external factors, threatening the company's biggest client. Isabella stayed late night after night, devising strategies, motivating her team, and presenting solutions directly to Lucas and the board. In the chaos, she discovered an inner calm she hadn't known she possessed, a confidence that had been forged in heartbreak and refined in professional triumph. By the end of the crisis, the client not only renewed their contract, but publicly praised the innovative solutions Isabella had orchestrated. Through it all, Lucas remained a steady force, celebrating victories and offering comfort during stress. One evening, as they sat on the couch sipping wine, he held her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Do you realize how far you've come?" Isabella laughed softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I do, and yet I still feel like I'm just getting started." He kissed her forehead, his lips warm, grounding her in the reality of being chosen, not settled for. Months later, spring returned, and with it a new chapter. Lucas surprised Isabella with a private trip to the countryside, a small cabin nestled among blooming cherry trees. Away from the city, away from work, away from the remnants of the past, they finally allowed themselves to breathe fully, to laugh without restraint, and to dream without fear. It was there, surrounded by the quiet beauty of nature, that Lucas knelt and proposed, a simple velvet box held between his hands. Isabella's heart raced, tears streaming down her face, not from sorrow, but from joy. "Yes," she whispered, trembling. "Yes, 1,000 yes." The engagement was quiet, personal, filled with the intimacy that Isabella had come to cherish. No grand ballrooms, no public declarations, just two people who had found each other at exactly the right time, each bringing their full selves to the partnership. Isabella reflected on the journey that had led her here: betrayal, heartbreak, professional triumphs, emotional growth, and the discovery that the truest love begins with self-respect and resilience. The day of their wedding arrived under a sky washed in golden sunlight. Friends and family gathered in a small garden, the scent of blooming flowers mingling with the crisp air. As Lucas took her hand, Isabella felt the weight of the past lift entirely. She had endured loss, heartbreak, and betrayal, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and unafraid. This time, she was marrying not just for love, but for a partnership grounded in respect, admiration, and unwavering trust. Standing there, exchanging vows with Lucas, Isabella understood a profound truth. Life sometimes breaks us to teach us strength. Love sometimes abandons us to show us what we truly deserve. And happiness often comes not from grand gestures, but from quiet, steady choices. And as she and Lucas walked hand in hand through the blooming gardens, Isabella smiled, knowing she had finally found a love worthy of her heart, and, more importantly, she had found herself.
The summer after their intimate wedding brought a sense of lightness Isabella had never known. Mornings were golden and quiet, Lucas making her coffee just the way she liked it, the two of them sharing smiles over plans for the day ahead. Yet Isabella's professional life demanded just as much dedication as her personal one. Hartwell Media had announced a global expansion initiative, and she had been entrusted with leading the campaign. The opportunity was both exhilarating and terrifying, a chance to prove to herself that her worth was not tied to anyone else's validation. Weeks of planning, long flights, and endless presentations tested her stamina and resolve. Yet every challenge reaffirmed her resilience. In boardrooms filled with skeptical executives, Isabella stood tall, presenting strategies with precision and confidence. Her ideas were bold, innovative, and undeniably effective. When the company secured a landmark international contract under her leadership, applause erupted, and even Lucas, who had been quietly observing from the side, felt his chest swell with pride. He took her hand afterward, squeezing it gently. "You're unstoppable, Isabella. You've always been unstoppable." She smiled, feeling the weight of every heartbreak, every setback, every lonely night coalesce into a singular strength she now carried effortlessly. Amid the whirlwind of career milestones, Lucas remained a constant anchor. Their evenings were spent walking along the river, cooking together, or simply laughing on the couch as the city lights twinkled through the windows. One particular night, Lucas surprised her with a small, private rooftop dinner. The city spread below them like a glittering sea. "You've changed my life," he said softly, holding her hand in his. "Not because of the past, not because of what we've gone through, but because of who you are. Strong, brilliant, unstoppable. You're my partner in every sense." Isabella's heart swelled. "And you've changed mine," she replied, tears threatening to spill. "You've shown me that love can be steady, respectful, and real, that it can be something I choose every day instead of something that chooses me by chance." Just as her life seemed perfectly aligned, a shadow from her past appeared. Adrian Sullivan, having rebuilt part of his own life, requested a private meeting. Isabella hesitated but agreed, curious to see how far he had come and whether she could finally put any lingering doubts to rest. When they met, Adrian was candid, stripped of his former arrogance. "Isabella, I've learned more in the past year than I ever did before," he admitted. "Losing you was the wake-up call I needed. You've taught me, without even trying, what it means to respect, to care, to truly see someone, and I wanted to thank you." Isabella listened quietly, a calm strength radiating from her. "I appreciate that, Adrian, truly, but my life has moved forward, and I am happy where I am. I hope you find the same clarity and peace I have." As she left the cafe, Isabella felt a sense of finality she hadn't before. Her past no longer held power over her. It existed only as lessons, guiding her to be wiser, stronger, and more self-aware. Lucas was waiting outside, a reassuring presence. He smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Ready to go home?" She replied, her voice firm. "Home is wherever we choose to build it together." The remainder of the year brought continued professional accolades. Isabella was recognized as one of the top marketing innovators of the year, invited to speak at international conferences, and featured in industry magazines. Each achievement, however, was no longer a measure of worth, but a reflection of her dedication and vision. And Lucas was there for every triumph, not overshadowing her, not seeking credit, but celebrating quietly and wholeheartedly. Together, they had built a life where love and ambition could coexist without conflict, a partnership rooted in mutual respect and admiration. One evening, as autumn turned the city's trees to gold and crimson, Lucas proposed a spontaneous trip abroad. Isabella agreed, and they found themselves walking along the cobbled streets of a quaint European town, laughter echoing down narrow alleys. At a quiet cafe overlooking the river, Lucas took her hand, his eyes warm and unwavering. "I want every day with you, Isabella, not just the grand moments, not just the triumphs, but the quiet mornings, the late-night conversations, the mundane and extraordinary alike. I choose you every single day." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of pure joy. "I choose you too," she whispered, and in that moment she truly believed it. Returning home, Isabella reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the betrayal that had shattered her, the nights spent questioning her worth, the heartbreak that had seemed insurmountable. It had all been necessary. Each moment of pain had sharpened her strength, each disappointment had deepened her understanding of love, and each choice she had made had guided her to a life she could now cherish fully. She realized that happiness wasn't about perfection, it was about resilience, self-respect, and the courage to embrace love on one's own terms. The final chapter of her journey was quiet but profound. On a brisk winter evening, Isabella and Lucas hosted a small gathering of friends and family in their home. Laughter, warmth, and joy filled the rooms, a celebration not just of achievements or love, but of life itself. Isabella stood at the window, Lucas beside her, reflecting on the years past. She understood now that love, true love, is patient. It waits for the right time, respects boundaries, and honors the growth of each person. And most importantly, it is built on the foundation of self-worth and mutual choice. As Lucas took her hand and they stepped outside into the starry night, Isabella smiled, feeling the fullness of her life and heart. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and self-doubt, and emerged not just whole, but thriving. She had found love that complemented her strength rather than defined it, and a life where ambition and joy could flourish side by side. The lessons of the past were no longer chains, but wings, lifting her into a future filled with endless possibility. And in that quiet moment, with the world stretching endlessly before them, Isabella understood. The greatest love story is not the one where you find someone to complete you, but the one where you find someone who sees your completeness and chooses to build a life alongside it, day after day, choice after choice, together.